Hey there, and welcome to Pop Wild. I'm your host, Maria, and today I'm here to pump you up about mussels.
Not like mussels like our mussels, but mussels with two S's, like freshwater mussels. I have a confession. I didn't even know that freshwater mussels existed in Ohio before I started working at the Cincinnati Nature Center. It's been fascinating to get to know these creatures that have such a history alongside humans in the Ohio River Valley. How did freshwater mussels affect a river town's growth? Were there mussels on shirts before there were mussel shirts?
Let's find out.
I'm here exploring Long Branch Farm and Trails with Emma Taylor, who's one of our naturalists here at the Cincinnati Nature Center, and she's also president of our Freshwater Mussel Fan Club. Just kidding, we totally don't have a Freshwater Mussel Fan Club, but we should. So Emma, what do you have for me today?
I have for us today a fat mucket right here in my hands.
Ooh, a fat mucket. And what is a fat mucket?
A fat mucket is a kind of freshwater mussel.
So where do freshwater mussels live?
A freshwater mussel is a mussel that grows in fresh water. So folks may have heard of marine mussels. These are just mussels that live in streams just like this one here, also rivers too.
What do they do when they're hanging out in these waterways?
They basically hang out on the bottom of our freshwater waterways, and they will filter feed as the stream flow comes over them. They'll open and close their shell, filter feeding things like algae and diatoms, really a lot of the tiny things that make up and live in our waterways, but they can also filter things like E. coli.
So they do really good things for us too.
Absolutely. I like to think of them as the janitors of our waterways.
I love that. I remember you telling me a fun fact about how freshwater mussels reproduce, and it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, yes. So once a mussel is created of fertilized eggs, they do it in the water. So all the fertilization happens in the water, and then a mother will either release it up into the stream and it's eaten by a fish. I say eaten with parentheses because sometimes what happens is a fish goes to eat it and then instead it hangs out in their gills where that little tiny mussel, it's not a mussel yet, but it's kind of like a pre-mussel. It's gonna hang out there and filter feed. And then once it gets big enough, it'll drop out of the fish and find its own spot somewhere in the bed. Now, one cool thing is some mama mussels will actually put out a lure that a fish tries to come and eat. But tricky, it's actually an egg that mama's putting in a fish gill to stay safe.
They are sort of biofilters for our waters. Do they do anything else for the health of our streams?
Yeah, absolutely. So they are a great source of food for different animals that live in streams like this. Once they die and their shells are kind of open, they're laying around in the stream, they provide a great source of shelter for some small creatures that live on the bottom. And as their shells decompose, those nutrients that mussel has taken up in its life are re-released back into the stream and provide a really healthy environment too.
So one of the cool things about freshwater mussels are their common names. They might not look like the most charismatic animals that you've ever seen, but they have the most charismatic common names. Here are a few of our favorites.
Plain pocketbook,
Raid bean,
purple wartyback,
snuff box,
three-horned wartyback,
creeper,
elephant ear,
little spectacle case,
maple leaf, a giant floater,
white heel splitter,
pink heel splitter,
creek heel splitter. I'm sensing a theme here. These will split your heels. Emma and I have just met up with Jason Newman, who is our public programs manager here at the Cincinnati Nature Center. And Jason probably knows Long Branch Farm and Trails better than anyone, so he is our perfect guide for this adventure we're going on today. Jason, where are we headed?
We're headed down to O'Bannon Creek, and lots to explore here. We're going to find exactly what we need.
So we are going on a freshwater mussel quest today. And maybe we'll find one. What do you think, Jason?
Here's one.
Oh, was that there?
It was. It was long since dead, though. We're looking for ones that happen to be alive in the water themselves.
Yep, so that means we are actually getting in the water today. Is there anything that we should keep in mind before we get in the creek here?
Well, for us as staff, once in a while, we head down into our creek, but as a guest, this is off limits. Don't do this on your own.
Don't do this at home, kids. And remember, all of the mussel names that had heelsplitter in them were wearing shoes.
So here's our friend we found in the stream. This is how they would have been situated on the bottom there, just poking out so that they can filter feed. Right now, they're closed up, which is understandable. Some weird human grabbed them out of the stream and wants to look at them up close, so they're defending themselves.
So now we went exploring. We're
Yes, we
officially creek explorers.
Oh yeah!
But we are not the first people who have gone searching for freshwater mussels, right?
Nope, not at all. At least for the past 10,000 years, humans have been using mussels in some way. We can think of indigenous folks before there's ever metal in this area of the world that they would make a fantastic tool. So I have an example of a tool here. This would have been, think of like a garden hoe. So this is one we've recreated. We've got our mussel. This could be used to dig in the ground.
Make a good scooper.
Yes, a very good scooper. Also, that beautiful pearly inside is great for jewelry as well. And people have been eating them for that long. I talked about that beautiful inside. More recently, mussels have been used to make buttons. What happened was button producers from Europe eventually made their way over here in the 1800s, and they saw our freshwater mussels and said, ooh, we could use those too. And so that's when the mussel button industry really got going. We actually have about 1/3 of the world's mussels in America. So we have a lot of different species to choose from. So they got here and they were like, ooh, look at all these pretty colors, look at all these shapes. They collected them, brought them to factories where they would punch holes out of the shells.
Is that what you have right there?
Yes, that is what I have here. So I have two different types here. One's a bit bigger and one's a bit smaller, but both of these shells have been used to make buttons.
So were there any places near Cincinnati that would be making these freshwater mussel buttons?
Absolutely. So people on the Ohio River could collect mussels, take them downstream to Madison, Indiana, and unload off there and give them the shells there where they had a factory.
Well, thank you, Emma, for joining us on the adventure today.
Yeah, it was great. I love adventures.
Following up from what I've discovered so far, I'm taking a short road trip to Madison, Indiana to try and learn more about the button making industry and what it meant to the development of this town.
I've made it to Madison, which, as Emma told us, was one of the largest producers of freshwater mussel buttons in the area. Right behind me is the Key West Shrimp House, but I'm not here to have lunch. This used to be the C.B. Mellish Button Factory, which produced trillions of mussel buttons in its history. Upon entering the factory, the mussels would be boiled in an ammonia solution to remove the animals from the shells. Once the shells were cleaned, they'd be put into cutting machines where holes or blanks would be drilled into the shells. Smaller holes would then be drilled into the blanks so that these could be used as buttons and sewn onto garments. Women work both inside the factory here and in their homes, sewing these buttons onto paper cards to get them ready for sale. In fact, this was one of the largest cottage industries here in Madison, Indiana.
At its height, the button-making industry in the Midwest employed up to 10,000 workers. However, the factories were harsh and often dangerous places to work, with poor ventilation and frequent accidents. By the mid-1900s, the freshwater mussel button industry had largely disappeared and was replaced by the new buttons of the plastic industry. But the damage to freshwater mussel populations was devastating. Despite government and industry attempts to repopulate rivers, many of the large mussel beds of the Midwest had been all but depleted.
Even though the freshwater mussel button craze of the 1800s is over, these animals still face a variety of challenges, including invasive species, water diversion in dams, and pollution. Fortunately, there are people and organizations dedicated to the conservation of these mysterious mollusks. And there are things that you can do to help, even if you've never seen one in real life.
First, get to know your local waterways. Where does water in your neighborhood flow into? Are there mussels there? Use pesticides and herbicides responsibly, as these can flow into your local waterways. And finally, advocate for the relocation of mussels during construction projects if necessary.
Sometimes the things we can't see are still really important for our ecosystems, like freshwater mussels. These animals can tell us about our past and give us clues to how to live better in the future. Thanks for watching this episode of Pop Wild. If you've seen a freshwater mussel or have a question about a mysterious creature in your local stream, leave a comment or question below. And until next time, keep it curious.